Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Hey, we've jumped back in our time machine for another Throwback Thursday, and this week we're going to go back to my conversation with one of my favorite Rockets of the 1980s, Roddy McCray. For those of you too young to remember, he was the third pick in the 1983 draft. The same year, the Rockets picked Ralph Sampson. 3 years later, he made the out-of-bounds pass to Sampson on that unforgettable last-second shot against the Lakers that put the Rockets in the 86 finals. I was thinking of McCray this week with the trade deadline having just passed because in 1988, he was traded as part of the deal to get Otis Thorpe. And Thorpe was key to the 94 Rockets championship. Then Thorpe was dealt for Clyde Drexler, so basically McCray was crucial for 3 Rockets trips to the finals and 2 championships. McCray is now the head coach at Victory Prep High School here in Houston, and early in the conversation from 3 years ago, I asked him about one of his players, Jared Vanderbilt, who at that time was about to go to Kentucky. Turns out Vanderbilt was part of that 4-team deal the Rockets just made to get Robert Covington and is now in Minnesota. What a career Rodney McCray had. I asked him about playing under Louisville legend Denny Crum, playing with Hakeem, winning a championship with Michael Jordan, and guarding the likes of Larry Bird, James Worthy, and Dominique Wilkins. He did all of that. He also talks about what it was like to be a part of the NCAA Tournament Classic between Phi Slama Jama and the Doctors of Dunk. Without further ado, let's get in the Wayback Machine and talk to the freight train, Rodney McCray.
All right, McCray at midcourt looking, goes to Level. Nice pass. Level's going to drive to the basket. He turns and reverse layup. No, tipped in McCray with 1 second to go. Rodney McCray tipped it in with a second to go.
Rodney, I remember back when you were drafted back in '83, and in my bedroom I used to have a Nerf ball, and I would pretend to be Roddy McCray, have the line drive jump shot that you had. What do you remember about those days? Just you get the call that you're third pick of the draft and you're going to be a Houston Rocket. You're coming to Houston.
Well, it seems like it was just yesterday. First realizing that all your hard work paid off, was about to pay off, and a dream come true, getting the opportunity to play in the NBA and to come to a great city, warm weather like Houston was exciting. I had only been here one other time, and that was my freshman year as we made our way to the NCAA championship game. We came through Houston and played Texas A&M and LSU to get to the Final Four. So it was just a culmination of all your hard work and that you finally got to the top of your profession, and it was just a great feeling at that time.
I want to talk to you more about the Rockets and also your stint in Louisville, but you've been coaching Jared Vanderbilt, who's one of the top 25 guys in the country. He's decided to go to Kentucky next year. Now, you're a Louisville guy. Did that hurt you a little bit when you heard he goes, I'm going to Kentucky?
Yeah, it hurt me. We joke about it, but I remember when I first met him over 4 years ago. I saw him for the first time just go through workouts. I called up to Louisville. I said, look, I just got a young man that enrolled at the school. He's special talent. He's going to be something special. Y'all need to keep him on the radar. So I did reach out and let him know a long time ago. But, he's been recruited for over 4 years. He's played with the Houston Hoops AAU, and everybody's had opportunity to see him. But I think he at the final decision, he made a good choice for himself, and he's excited. I'm excited for him. But UK is getting, a great talent and somebody who could, if he keeps working hard, can do some things at the next level. But it's going to be an adjustment when you come from high school to college, especially going to University of Kentucky. We know that their Coach Cal pushes them, and they perceived as the one and done school. So he's going to get them ready in a short period of time. So I've just been feeding him like you got to be mentally and physically ready when you step on campus come June.
Let me take you back to your recruiting process. You're a kid out of New York, right? You're Mount Vernon, I believe, was
yes.
Where you from? So when you're going through the recruiting process, how did you come up with Louisville? And tell me about getting recruited by Denny Crum.
It was a different circumstance for me. I had an older brother, Scooter, who's 16 months older than me, and I was able to see firsthand the recruiting process a year before it was really my turn. So I sat in on all the speeches and the sales pitches as far as why you should come to this school and where we're going to play you, what we envisioned our team being like with you. So, and I see it was basically I was sitting there a year before, but it just was my brother who was being recruited. So he narrowed his choices down, and our high school coach had just got a job at Wichita State University. My brother just narrowed his choices down to Wichita State. Marquette, who our next-door neighbor, Earl Tatum at the time, had attended the school, St. John's locally. He had scheduled a visit to Louisville, but the time he was supposed to visit, they had a terrible snowstorm, so he wasn't able to make that visit. And he was pretty much set to attend Marquette. And at that time, Al McGuire was the coach, and they were, coming off winning a national championship. Plus, our next-door neighbor had went there, so he was, pitching his sales bid to also. And I remember when Al McGuire decided he was going to retire at the end of that year, and Hank Raymond's took over. And when he came in and his home visit, I sat in, and at the end of that home visit, my brother was like, I think I'm going to attend Marquette. What do you think? I said, everything sounds pretty good, but he never told you where he would play you and things like that. And I expressed to him, I said, when my turn comes, I'm going to try to take all my visits, which at that time I believe was 6. And he had decided not to go to Louisville since they had canceled his trip. But Coach Houston, who was Allen Houston's father, who was the top recruiter for Louisville at the time, called him and said, look, we got another recruit coming in. We'd like for you to come the weekend of the banquet. So he decided to take that trip and met Wiley Brown, who wound up attending the University of Louisville. When he came back, he said, I'm going to Louisville. He said they hit it off well. It was a small community that loved basketball, and he just had a great time. And that's how he decided to go there. Now, next year it was just a matter of did I want to continue playing with my brother or not, and we had so much success at Mount Vernon winning a couple of state championships that I decided, let's see if we could do this at the next level, which was the college level, and we've had a lot of success down there, and the community just embraced us. It was a small university where you could walk to your classrooms. You interacted a lot with the students, and it was just reminded us a lot of Mount Vernon, New York.
Then you get to play with Darrell Griffith, Dr. Dunkenstein, one of the great nicknames in all of basketball, and you guys win a championship in 1980. Almost right out of the gate. So what was it like to play with Darrell Griffith, and what do you remember about playing with him?
Well, I remember my brother's first year, and I think Griff had played one summer with the World University games, and they showed him jumping over a player. First thing out of my mouth was, does Griff jump as high as they say he jumped? He was like, yeah, he jumps that high. So I just couldn't wait to get there so I could see for myself. But I knew going in that they had a young team because when my brother went there a year before, they had 4 talented freshmen that came in the year before I arrived. So when I made a selection to go there, a lot of people were like, well, you're going there. They're a young team. You think you're going to be able to play? I was like, I'm confident no matter where I go that I'm going to play as long as I work hard. And plus, I want to be pushed every day in practice. But when I stepped onto the campus my first week, and we was just working out, and I was like, whoa, this is going to be a little tougher than I thought it was going to be. But the competition level in practice was so high that when it came time for the game time, it just made it that much easier because you knew if you didn't bring your A game that somebody coming in off that bench might play that night, play well, and you might not get back in the game. So you was always on your toes, ready to compete, practice, and it worked out for the best for us. 3 Final Four appearances in 4 years at that time was pretty much unheard of.
You didn't win the game in '83 that everybody remembers around here against U of H, but it was one of the great games ever. What was it like to be in that atmosphere? And I believe that was in New Mexico, right, in Albuquerque?
Yes. It was, all year long, we were considered basketball junkies, and when we weren't playing, we were watching ESPN, who had just burst onto the scene. And I remember after some games, I would be in my dorm, and there was a guy on the second floor, and we just come in the hallway and start talking. You see ESPN? Did you see North Carolina? Did you see James Worthy last night? And it was just, you see U of H, you see Slama, Jama. So we've always thought to be the best, you had to play the best. And during that senior year, me and my brother was like, what do you think the game would be like if we played Houston? And we knew we were on a collision course. If we continued to do what we were going to do and they were going to do that, eventually we would meet, and it wouldn't have been the same to get to a championship game if you didn't have opportunity to play with who you considered could have been or was the best team in the country that year. But it was a great game. It was a great hype. It lived up to the hype. And, of course, we were on the short end of the stick, but it was one of those games that's going to last in your memory forever.
You get drafted by the Rockets, and, after playing with all the great teams in Louisville, the good news is you're great enough to get drafted early in the draft. The bad news is that was a really bad team you guys came in on, you and Ralph. What was that like that first year? And you walk in and you go from Denny Crum to Mr. Happy Bill Fitch.
Well, the year before we got there, they had won, I believe, 16 games, 16 or 14 games. I believe it was 16. So me and Ralph, I was like, I know we're going to be able to win at least 20-something games. We're going to win more than 16 games. But we were on a plan, a 5-year plan to just keep getting better, add players along each year. And not only did me and Ralph come in, we also had Craig Elo, who was part of that team. Most people remember him as playing for Cleveland, but he did start out in Houston. But we were fortunate enough to come to a team that had a lot of veteran leadership. Elvin Hayes was getting ready to retire at the end of the year. Robert Reed had come back. It had a lot of guys who had been to the finals in '81 that pulled two rookies to the side and said, if you want to last here, this is what you need to do. You need to take care of your body. You need to get your rest because it's a long season. I remember just running up and down the court just fast as I could every practice, and one of the guys pulled me aside. It's like, you do know we play 82 games, right? You need to slow down. I was like, oh, okay. So, but it made a difference for me and probably Ralph and a lot of veterans, a lot of rookies coming into situations where the veterans took them up under their wing and kind of showed them the ropes, and that allowed us to be successful in the NBA.
You get Olajuwon the next year, and when they make that draft pick, it's going to be Hakeem and Ralph, the Twin Towers, really the original version maybe of the Twin Towers. You see today we just got Boogie Cousins and Anthony Davis together. What did you think? How did you think that was going to work? And as the guy that was out front there, you had to like it because you knew if somebody got by you, they weren't getting very far.
Absolutely. Well, when they drafted me the year before, there was a lot of speculation that they were going to take, they were looking at Clyde, they were looking at Darrell, they were looking at guys that could score. And at that time, when they were interviewing players, I don't believe they had made a selection of which coach they were going to bring. Because remember, Darrell Harris had been let go, and they were still kind of searching for a coach. And our CD, who was Carol Dawson at the time, I believe, was part of the scouting department, and he was, they bring people in to work out. But when Coach Fitch got the job, right away he said he was looking for a complimentary player who wasn't per se looking to score. We needed somebody that could get the ball to Ralph at that time and just play his role, because I like to play defense, like to get the ball to the open man. I was pretty much all-around ball player. So after our rookie year, which we thought was a successful year, we get lucky. Like you said, we got Olajuwon, and I'm like, I remember just hearing that we won the coin toss, and they were going to select Olajuwon. So I was like, okay. My first thought was like, which one of those two guys are going to play the power forward? And Ralph, who always thought he was a guard, said, I'll play power forward. So it really made my job a whole lot easier. Instead of having one guy to throw the ball to, I had two of them, and you just play off of them. But, again, we had picked up John Lucas. We had Lewis Lloyd, who loved to score. We had Mitchell Wiggins coming off the bench. So the team was really looking pretty good. And like I told you, we were on a 5-year plan, and we got to the finals in 3 years. So it was pretty successful. We liked our team. We liked the pieces, and it was like a puzzle. Everybody fit together. They knew their roles, and we played it to the T.
Did the fans take a while to warm up to you? Because I know there was a contingent out there that wanted to see him draft Clyde Drexler. You know, he played for Phi Slama Jama. He was a Houston kid. I'm sure you understood the way they felt about that. And, you know, you came in, and they probably thought, well, this guy's the guy that just beat, you know, this guy that just took on Clyde and played him, and Clyde beat him and all that kind of thing. Did it take him a while to kind of warm up to you?
Well, I knew coming in that every time I stepped out on the court that I had to be ready to play and play well. Because if you don't, you know, see, I told you they should have took Clyde and all this stuff. And my whole thinking was, and the night before the draft, me and Clyde sat in the hallway and we're talking about just living, you know, tomorrow we're going to, you know, fulfill our dream. So I felt as though if they picked Clyde, that they would have been making a great decision. But I also felt that I was a good player. And there was other players in the draft that were pretty good players that they could have taken too. So you look at it now, Clyde's a top 50 player. It worked out well for him, and it worked out pretty good for me too. But there's people today like, I can't believe that they, you know, took you over Clyde. And you got some people that said they made, you know, a good decision because they needed a complimentary player at that time. And I believe Clyde, when he first came in, when he went to Portland, they had penciled him in as a 3-man. But we know he turned out he was one of the greatest two guards in the NBA history. So I was just happy to be drafted no matter where I went. I'm glad I came to Houston, but if I'd have went to Kansas City, I'd have been happy. And but at the end of the day, it worked out well for both of us. Eventually, Clyde made his way back here. He won the championship. And
in a way, you got us Clyde because they traded you and Jim Peterson for Otis Thorpe, and then Thorpe ended up getting dealt for Clyde Drexler. So it all worked out, and both of those guys were very critical parts, obviously, of them winning both of the championships. I wanted to also talk to you about the nickname, because I remember, as good as nickname as the Dream was as a kid, I loved, you know, the Freight Train. Where did that come from?
I believe McCoy McLemore, who's no longer with us, you know, it could have been Bill Orwell. It was like anytime you see him on the break, he's going straight to the basket. And that was my way of thinking, like, okay, if you're going to draw a charge on me, you're going to feel it. The next time you may move out the way. So I was just one of those guys that like to get up and down the floor, like to finish strong at the hoop. And that was my game, like running the floor, defending, like I said, and getting other people involved. So I kind of embraced the nickname and try to live up to it in some form.
Now, you had to guard some of the great small forwards in a golden age of small forwards. Tell me, I think all these guys you had to guard probably at one point: Mark Aguirre, Bernard King, James Worthy, Adrian Dantley, Dominique Wilkins, Xavier McDaniel, Larry Nance, Alex English, and Larry Bird. You were guarding all those guys, right?
Absolutely. That was my job when I showed up here in Houston. I knew first and foremost that defensively, it probably was one of the key ingredients for giving me the opportunity to be drafted as high and wind up in Houston. So I took pride in playing defense, and my whole thought process was if the guys scored 30, they were supposed to score 30 because at that time the small forward position was the scoring position in the league. And what I pride myself on was watching game film, being a student of the game, and guys that were professional scorers, you're just not going to stop them because every time down floor, their teammates is looking to get the ball. The ball has to go through them. Like when I was with the Rockets, the ball had to go through Olajuwon and Sampson. Everybody knew it. So I just try to take maybe one thing away from them, try to make them do things that they were uncomfortable and get a hand up and just stay with them. But my thought process was every time they touched the ball, the mindset was they were looking to score. So you couldn't relax defensively, and it allowed me to make a couple of all-NBA all-defensive teams. And like I said, I took pride in defense.
Who was the toughest of those guys to guard? Who did you hate going up against? I mean, I'm sure all of them had their problems, but who was the toughest?
All of them had big games at one time or another. It was just they scored in different ways. You had AD who could get you in foul trouble. I mean, you couldn't even breathe on him. They call a foul. He go to free throw line. You had Alex English, who is just poetry in motion. You had Bernard King, who during the playoffs against the Celtics, 2 50-point games. It's hard to say. You got Dr. J, who was still doing this thing when I came in. But I just, like I said, I took pride and took the challenge. I was just like, you know what? I have opportunity to play against these great players. Let's see what I could do against them. And at the end of the day, I thought I did a pretty good job in the 10 years that I had a chance to play in the NBA.
You get Worthy, and he's got that lightning-quick first step to the basket, and he makes that move and he's gone. And you play those guys in the '86 Western Conference Finals. What do you remember about that Western Conference Finals? Everybody remembers the Sampson shot, and of course, and you were the one who threw the ball to Sampson with one of the great plays in NBA history.
Well, I have a lot of respect for James Worthy. I have a lot of respect for all the guys that I had the opportunity to play against for 10 years. I tell guys that I coach now, I said, first and foremost, you have to respect the opponent, because any given night they could explode on you. They could have a good game. So anybody's capable of, just playing well. So that year we had a chance to play the Lakers. I remember years past, you would always see the Lakers and the Celtics in the finals, and I would say, wow, nobody else can get to the finals, so here's our opportunity. We're supposed to be the young up-and-coming team in the Western Conference. We're going against the Laker dynasty, Showtime, and the matchups, me and Worthy was kind of similar, that we liked to get out on the break, but he was, after Kareem, he was their go-to guy in the post, so I knew I had my hands full, but we were just ready for the challenge. We had to go through some growing pains, because the first couple of years we had trouble beating the Lakers. But that particular year, I believe we won the last meeting against them, and we were looking forward to, have an opportunity to play them in the playoffs. And like I said before, in order to be the best, you have to beat the best. And at that time, the Lakers were the best team in the NBA, and They pretty much handled us easily the first game, and then the next 4 games, we beat them 4 games in a row. And at that time, we were taking the games one game at a time. And then when I look back on it, I was like, wow, we beat the Lakers 4 straight games to get to the NBA Finals, and that was a feat in itself. And it was just the future looked bright for the Houston Rockets at that time. 3 years in, 2 years with Olajuwon, 3rd year with me, Ralph, we were looked like we were going to be on top of the Western Conference for a long time to come.
I've heard you say that, Ralph, you weren't surprised that he made this shot because he practiced that shot.
Coach Fitch would always say you have to have a basic go-to move. If we call your number a shot that you could depend on, it may not necessarily go in, but it's going to give us the best opportunity possibly to tie the game or win the game. And he would shoot some shots like that over his shoulder. It is not the prettiest shot, but when we went out there for the formation and I saw how the Lakers were lining up, I was anxious. I was just had my hands ready, like, please, official, give me the ball, like, right now before the Lakers realized that I have a direct line straight to Ralph. And I remember Worthy looking at Coach Riley, you want me to get on the ball, you want me to fall back in Ralph's lap, or how you want me to play it? And they were kind of in limbo, and when he gave me the ball, I was like, just make a good pass to him.
McCray will inbound, 1 second on the clock. Sampson. It goes, it's over. A miraculous shot by Ralph Sampson has given the Houston Rockets a trip to Boston for the NBA World Title.
And I got a direct line to him, and he touched his hand, he shot it over his shoulder, and it bounced up, and it almost looked like when you slowed it down, Mitchell Wiggins was like right there. Like, he was like, man, I could tip this in, and I'm glad he just let it go, and it trickled in. And for a moment, it was like, we getting ready to go to the NBA Finals. And it was just a great feat at that time to eliminate the Lakers on their home floor and have a celebration out there in L.A. And I just remember when we were in the locker room celebrating, and they had like a tunnel that connected the Lakers locker room to the visitors locker room, and Magic came over there and congratulated us and told us good luck and wished us well and bring the championship back to the Western Conference. So it was just one of those times that you remember for the rest of your life when you had opportunity to play in NBA Finals.
Was that your favorite moment in the NBA? Because you won a championship with Michael Jordan, but maybe weren't as involved with that team, and you were much more a part of what happened with the Rockets in '86.
I believe it probably is because, like you said, as rookies, we came in and had just come off winning 14 to 16 games, and we won like 29 games our rookie year. Then we get Olajuwon, and then we make the playoffs his rookie year, our second year in the league. We get knocked out by Utah, and you know how the NBA is, or professional sports is, if they can improve the team, well, it's each year that they're looking to do that. But Coach Fitch came in with like I said, a 5-year plan, and we really never lost any of our core players. We, after our first year was, I believe, Robert Reed came back, myself and Ralph. They picked up Lou Lloyd. The next year, we pick up Mitchell Wiggins and John Lucas, and, of course, Olajuwon. And that was our core rotation right there. And then we picked up complementary players that knew their roles, that made us work hard in practice. And we just had great team chemistry. And I believe to be successful at any level that you have to spend time not only on the floor, but off the floor. Practice over, where we going to eat at. We're going to eat at Luby's. We had lunch together on the road. We may go to the movies, but we were just a tight, close-knit family, because you spend more time with those guys during the year than your actual family. Because, from October to, if you're fortunate enough to go to the playoffs, it could be to June that you spend time with your teammates. So you become close, and it's just a family atmosphere.
Which Rocket were you closest with during those years?
Me and Ralph. Because me and Ralph came in together as rookies, and actually he was the first one that kind of gave me a hint that I might be coming to Houston, because I didn't know officially until the night before the draft, when Coach Fitch actually called me and told me that they were going to select me tomorrow. But Ralph was, we were in New York doing a little TV tour with the 3 networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC, and Ralph, myself, and Steve Stefanovich was up there. And we were ironically in the restroom, and he came in there. I was washing my hands, and he kind of said, "I think me and you going to Houston." Well, of course, we knew he was coming. That we going to Houston Tuesday. And I was like, "Really?" But I didn't say anything to anybody, because I know that things could change. And my father always told me things until they happen, then you don't know it's so. So when Coach Fitch called me and told me that, I was still kind of unsure, because between the night before and the day of, something else could happen, a trade, or somebody could change their mind. So, but when they actually called my name, that's when I knew that I was heading to Houston.
What about Hakeem Olajuwon? Tell me what it was like to be around him on a regular basis. When the guys ask you what it was like to play with Olajuwon, I'm sure your players ask you, what are the stories that you think of? Well,
when I first saw him, of course, I played against him in the Final Four. The first thing that came to mind was, man, this guy is a great offensive player, because, they never really threw him the ball. And until after, me and Clyde came out the same draft. The next year, you kind of saw his offensive skill. But like I said, Michael Young was still there. And Olajuwon, that's the first thing came to mind. I was like, this guy has great footwork. Offensively, I didn't know he could do that. But he was doing some things out there just on his talent and ability, and being a student of the game. You saying yourself, once he, understands and learns the game more, that he's really going to be tough to to defend. He was already hard to guard just when he stepped on the floor as a rookie. And you just say, oh, this is going to be a problem for the league, the opponents for years to come. But he was a hard worker. He loved to not only compete in the games, he loved practice. He's just one of those guys that when I later on in my career, or my career was over, people would ask me, was MJ the best that, you ever played with? I was like, MJ, no doubt, is one of the best players that ever played the game, but I'm not going to, take anything away from him, Olajuwon, because he was a great player.
And you were there that game. You were playing with him that game against Seattle where he had about 48 and 24 or something like that in the playoffs.
I'm still upset about that game because we had home court advantage. We lost the first two games in Houston, and we went down there and won. In that game you're talking about, there was a missed call. I wish they had instant replay where me and Dream came down on a break, 2-on-1. I probably, looking back, I should have laid it up, but I dropped it off to him, and he laid it in. He laid it off the glass. They hit it after it came off the glass. They wound up fouling him. He went and knocked down 2 free throws, but had they counted the basket, we would have came back here for game 7, which we felt as though if we could get it back to Houston, that it would have been another matchup with the Lakers the next round. So, but that game was back and forth. He was incredible. They couldn't stop him. But it was one of those situations where losing 2 games at home caught up to us, and we made some mental mistakes that cost us the ball game and ultimately cost us the series, not being able to get it back here to Game 7. But I remember that game like we just played it yesterday.
What do you remember about that, playing against Larry Bird in the 86 finals and trying to figure out what to do with him?
Well, I already knew it was going to be a handful. And I remember me and Coach Fish talking. He was like, in order for us to, have opportunity to win this thing, that I was going to have to play, pretty good or play close to the same kind of stat line or numbers that Bird was going to play at. So, but I just went in there confident that I was going to play well, that we were going to play well, and we had a great opportunity to win that series. Looking back on it and listening to a lot of the historians, they recognize that Celtic team as possibly the best Celtic team of all time. You're looking at Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Bill Walton, Dennis Johnson. That's 5 Hall of Famers. And that at that time there was a 2-3-2 format. And I believe that we had a great opportunity to steal Game 1. But when we came back here, we won 2 out of 3 games. And we should have won all 3 of the games, but we missed the assignment at a crucial point in the game in a pick-and-roll situation with Larry Bird and Bill Walton, where we had already talked about what we were going to do had they pick-and-roll, and we misread or misplayed that one situation and left Larry Legend open, and he just drained a three-pointer. And instead, like I said, instead of winning through all 3 games here at Houston, we won 2 out of 3. We went back to Boston down 3-2, and the rest is history. But again, we felt as though that wasn't going to be our only appearance in the final. So we went through it. You had to go through some things, but we were looking forward to possibly coming back the next year.
How worried were you about John Lucas? I mean, you guys went through a lot with the situation with him in 86 going into 87 as well. Were you concerned about his well-being as all that stuff is going on?
Well, at first, being a young guy in the league and not knowing what you know now as an older person, that first come to mind is how could you do this to the team? We had great chemistry. We had a chance to do some great things together, and this happens. And now, but that's the selfish way of thinking. I didn't, knowing what you know now, that it's addiction and that people need help, and you think about the well-being of the person more so than winning championships. And we talk about that now when I see him, and he comes up to me, he's like, man, I I'm with you guys, man. We got a championship. We got more than one championship. If I, would have taken care of what I need to take care of, and I always tease him. I said, it's not guaranteed we would have got to the final because you didn't play a lick of defense, right? So we lost a great basketball player, but I tease him about his defensive end of the court inabilities. But he's turned it around. Happy for him. We talk about it, and of course, older and more mature now. And like I said, I'm just glad that he was able to turn it around. And do I think that we probably would have won the championship had he been with us? Absolutely. But it was just some of those things. You got to go through things, and it was just unfortunate that that happened to him, happened to the ball club. But today he's doing well, and I'm happy for him. We're still friends, still close.
And what he's gone through is probably, if he hadn't gone through it, he wouldn't have saved some other people's lives. So you have to think of it in those terms also. And so you lose him and you lose Wiggins and Lloyd with the drugs. But was it just as big as anything that Ralph had the injury? I mean, what do you think was bigger that, maybe the difference between you guys winning some championships? Obviously, all of them were important, but, losing Ralph and that special thing that nobody else in the league had, which was the Twin Towers and Ralph and Hakeem, the injury to me might have been as big as anything because those guys would have dominated together and were so young, and it would have been for years and years.
Well, you look at the league today and how it was back then, that we were so we wanted to get back on the court so fast because, one, we knew that our team needed us, and the medical staff was, they was pushing and things like that. But in today's game, they're just more careful with their superstar players. Like, okay, if it's 6 to 8 weeks, we might give you 10 weeks, or you got rosters that are 15 players deep now. So there's a lot of factors today that you didn't have, you weren't accessible to back in the day when we played. But Ralph was already a thin guy. He would come into training camp like 265. Opening day, he'd be down to 225. I was still scratching my head, but he was a hard worker. He played power forward. He had to chase around guys like Tom Chambers, Karl Malone, and things like that. It was just unfortunate that after his first knee injury that it kind of followed him throughout his career, because when him and Dream were right together, unstoppable. I mean, they were working like, I don't know, high-low. They kind of figured it out. At first, it was just a feeling out process. The first year we went to the playoffs, but when I tell you, we played the Lakers in that third year, they kind of figured out, okay, whoever's playing Kareem, we're going to turn them this way. When they turn them back that way, here come the other towel, bam, we going the other way for fast breaks. So it was, I mean, if you just think about it, if they both were to stay healthy, they would have, I mean, it would have been something special. They'd still be talking about it right now. Just a couple of years that they played together, you could just look at highlights where it was no pair of big men that could match up with them. I mean, they both were agile. They both could run the floor. Both of them 20 and 10. I mean, two guys on the same team averaging 20-plus points and 10-plus rebounds a game. I mean, it just was special at that time.
Do you look at the Rockets part of your career as that's the main part of your career, and kind of it's everything else, because you've come back here, you've made Houston your home. That was a team that you got drafted on. You'd go to play for Dallas and Chicago and Sacramento and all. So does this feel like it's your main team still to this day?
Yeah, they gave me my first start. They gave me the opportunity to live a lifelong dream. I met my wife here. It's a great city. So I remember when I got traded, that's when you realize that it's a business, and it kind of hurt. But as you're flying out to your new destination, you kind of perk up and said, yeah, I would have just loved to still be in Houston, but I'm still in the NBA. What am I, upset about? You're still playing a game that you love to play, and it was an adjustment. Me and Jim Peterson went out there together, and that's why you got to make business decisions. It still hurts because, you know, you have relationships with people. You do everything they ask you to do, and then you're looking in the mirror like trying to figure out what you did wrong to get traded. But like I said, you look at the history of the game in sports that very rarely do you see one player stay in one place for a long time. You could count on maybe two hands the handful of people that played their whole career with one organization. That's just how it is, but it doesn't make it any easier the first time you get that call or notified that you've been traded.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about is Michael Jordan, of course, and what did you learn about Michael Jordan that you didn't know playing against him all those years, playing with him?
Well, when you go from one team to another, and of course every team has got a great player, and you're always wondering when you get there, and when I got Chicago, does he practice every day? How is it going to be? So I remember the first practice I went to, they had just came off of the Dream Team. So him and Scotty, Phil gave them like the first week, a couple of weeks off in exhibition to try to give them some rest. But when they came back to practice, I remember just walking to practice, and he's like one of the first ones in practice. And they practice hard. He doesn't miss practice. And I'm like, call my brother up. I was like, he's like, so MJ practice all the time? I said, every day. I said, he wasn't the first ones here. Matter of fact, practice be over, and he's still here. So it's just one of those things where that he, to be the best, he puts in the work. He's dedicated, he's focused, and when you see your best players, even like when I was in Houston with Olajuwon Sampson, you see your best players, the hardest workers are working hard. You can't help but do the same thing. So if you see your best players being late or whatever they may be, then you got some guys who, Rodney late. So I'm late one time, but your best players, your hardest workers, focused, can't wait till game time. It just trickles down to the rest of the team. But that was a great experience. It's just unfortunate at that time, body had started breaking down, and I just remember the late Moses Malone was telling me, they playing you too many minutes. You're playing too many minutes. But I was like, I feel great. I just feel great. I want to be out there. He was like, but it's taking a toll. You're talking about 82 games, 100-plus games if you make the playoffs. You need to rest because even in the off season, the 4 or 5 years that we didn't make the playoffs, I'm watching the playoffs. I might take a month off, but I might go home to the Boys and Girls Club and some friends of mine that I grew up with playing basketball. I'm out there playing in May, so I'm not really giving my body a chance to heal because I love the game so much that I want to continue to play it. But you could just feel that some things that you were able to do maybe 2 years prior to getting to Chicago, that your mind is telling you, go the ball, go get it, but your legs wouldn't get there. So I kind of told my brother, even before that year started, I was like, physically, if I don't start feeling better, this could be my last year. You're talking about at age 31. And I just was one of those players that I knew if I wasn't at my best, that it could be trouble out there because these guys, they're just too good. They're not going to, cut you any slack. Yeah, I know you hurt, but I got to put it on you tonight. And I wanted to be at my best to kind of measure where I was in the league. So it was one of those things I was happy to get 10 years in. And it was just a great experience in Chicago because each organization is run different. Each player, team is different. But those guys were true professionals. They worked hard. And everything that I saw before I got there, championship runs and all that, I could see why they, was part of I was in the third year of the first three-peat.
Of the three guys that I think of your main coaches, you had some great ones, Denny Crum and Bill Fitch and Phil Jackson. Which one do you take the most from when you're coaching your guys? Who do you feel like you're using a lot of his stuff?
I'd say Coach Crum, because Coach Crum, I've learned stuff from all of them, and I've learned that you have to be able to adapt to each coach you play for. Coach Crum was not a screamer and hollerer. He told you what he expected, and if you didn't do it, you'd be sitting on the bench. So he knew playing time was the key for everybody. They didn't like sitting on the bench. And I could tell you a story. When I first got there, I wasn't the hardest worker in practice, but when we scrimmaged and it was game time, I could perform in the game. And we played our first game against South Alabama, and I'm sitting on the bench. Coach getting ready to call me. You know, every time he looked down, I was looking back at him, and he called somebody next to me, and the final buzzer went off, and I didn't get in the game, and I was sitting in the locker room. I was clearly upset, and they were like, "Put your uniforms in the pile," so the athletic the equipment guy could wash it. And I'm taking my stuff off. Like, you don't even have to wash my stuff. I ain't even play tonight. And my brother's sitting next to me. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I can't believe that coach didn't put me in the game." He was like, "You thought you were going to play?" I said, "Yeah, I be killing in the scrimmages." He said, "Yeah, you do." He said, "But you lazy in practice." He said, "It ain't about the games." I said, "You got to transform that, bring that in practice." And I'm looking at him like, "Man, you my brother. You supposed to tell me, you're supposed to agree with me." He's like, "I'm telling you the truth. Don't you want me to tell you the truth? It's going to make you better down the road." So I got that message. He got hurt the third year, and it took his injury. I tell people today, it took his injury and get imprinted in my mind that I had to work hard each time, no matter whether it was practice or a game, that it just pays off down the road. But Coach Crum, I never heard him swear or anything. He had that program rolled up, and he tell us some stories about when he was at UCLA with Coach Wooden. And you don't have to be a screamer and hollerer. You can get your point across other ways. Coach Fitch was, from a military background, and you ain't got to like me, but in the end, if you can look at some of the things that Coach McHale has said, that him and Coach Fitch didn't get along when he got at Boston, but he understood it later on that he helped make him become the player that he was, because he was so hard on him, because he saw the potential in him. Same thing with Robert Parrish coming over from Golden State. So you just have to be focused and listen and learn. You can learn from everybody. You don't think you know it all, because even at this point, at age 55, I can look at I listen to NBA TV, Coach Hubie Brown and Coach Popovich, and you hear them talk about different players, different personalities, and I was like, oh, that's a different spin on it, that players are who they are. Don't try to change them. You just try to, communicate with them and things like that. But when you try to change them into something that they're not, that's when, it could cause problems.
Well, I wanted to just thank you for taking so much of your time with us, and also thank you for all the great memories over the years with the Rockets. It's the first team that I kind of fell in love with was your teams, and I have faint memories of the Moses Malone teams, but you guys are the ones I remember, and just a lot of great memories, and love following you, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and good luck with your guys over here at Victory Prep.
Thanks a lot.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Don't forget to follow Houston Sports Talk on Facebook and Twitter. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, the Google Podcast app, or the Stitcher app. You can support us by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or by telling your friends about us. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.